Now, joining us now in the expansion of this debate, South African Communist Party Deputy Secretary General Mapaila, who joins us. A very good morning to you. Thank you so much for your time. We're hearing a lot of reaction speaking to sanctions being imposed on Russia. Yet your take seems to be rather different. You're saying that you're calling for the support of Russia.
Well, what we have said firstly is that we don't support war. We think it's unfair to attack particularly civilian population who are innocent in the fight between world powers. But what is clear is that although an impression is created that Russia is the aggressor in this case, the aggressor is U.S. imperialism that has aggressively tried to encircle Russia, and Russia has to defend itself. This we understand ourselves. That the European Union, working with NATO, have disregarded the previous agreement that led to the disintegration of the Soviet Union as a socialist system, and now they are encircling Russia to finish it off, particularly from its defense mechanism. And that is why, if you remember in the past, there was a pact which was a countermeasure of NATO that has been destroyed with the fall of the Soviet Union, but NATO never disintegrated. It exists and continues to be an aggressive force. General Stoltenberg, we have cautioned him even in the recent past on his aggression towards the East, particularly around Russia, as well as China, particularly in the South China Sea and the Taiwan Strait, and they continue to do so. So we appreciate and know what is peace and unjust peace, what is war and unjust war. And in this case, we know that Russia, its intention is to defend its own sovereignty and integrity and not to be surrounded by air defense missiles from NATO and the USA, because that will create a continuous unilateral power as we see in the world. What is important, I think, which is missing in the whole debate is that Russia has the ability to stand to the big boys of the US and European Union who are intimidating the whole world. Today, US is sponsoring wars all over the world, in Syria, in the Middle East, in Latin America, occupying countries, destroying democratic countries for as long as they don't follow its own prescript. And now Russia had the capacity to stand against that U.S. imperialism. And that is a cause for celebration, not the attack on Ukraine, nonetheless.
The South African government has, surprised the international community by speaking out now, calling on Russia to withdraw its forces from Ukraine. And as you put your reasons why you believe that Russia needs the support that you speak of, what about, the reasons why Pretoria is saying that Russia should withdraw from the Ukraine out of respect for the sovereignty and the territorial integrity of states? How does that bode with you as you stand by what you're saying?
We understand that, except that it falls short of accepting the aggressiveness and the disregard of international law by the U.S. and European Union on many occasions, including the chipping in within the Russian territory. Because I think at core here is the defense system, that Russia's sovereignty and its own defense will be castrated by having the U.S. forces and NATO inside Ukraine, which has now literally accepted this notion and betrayed the Minsk Accord. And therefore, that statement is quite unfair, because it's short of basically just mechanical call for that any independent country, its borders must be respected, its sovereignty must be respected, which we also accept nonetheless. But we're trying to indicate that this matter has got a history to it, and that history, the price cannot only be paid by Russia. And the U.S. imperialism and their European partners are triumphalists in this regard on their defeat of the Soviet Union. They thought they would actually defeat Russia because what they do not want is the war machinery that is currently existing in Russia. For instance, they are protecting the nuclear weapons that are in Ukraine, for instance, but they condemn the nuclear weapons in Iran, they condemn the nuclear weapons in North Korea, and so forth, but they appreciate those that are under their control. And this move by Russia to protect even its own nuclear weapons that were taken over as part of, because they were part and parcel of the USSR before the disintegration. It's important because it cut exactly at the core of what the U.S. imperialists wanted to do, and then be able to defeat Russia. So there was a tactical and better move by President Putin. But as we say, we are for peace, we are not for war. But nonetheless, this action, we fully understand it. We fully understand why Russia had to protect its own defense. It's the same as, for instance, you allow a country that is like Lesotho, for instance, the USA to come and build its military power inside Lesotho, which is a landlocked country in South Africa, when we know that it is not a friendly force to us. That's exactly what is happening there in Ukraine. And Russia will be foolhardy to accept such a move by the US.
You say you're for peace and not for war. And as we began our conversation, I spoke and made mention of the sanctions that many of the countries are calling for, saying, some are going as far as saying that they believe that Russia should be cut off from the international financial budget, and others saying that these sanctions should go even further and personally impact President Vladimir Putin, because he's got a lot of assets and he stands to lose. What's your take on that being put forward as a solution to ending what's happening there?
The use of international instruments of finance, it's an evil instrument that is used by the imperialist forces, instead of allowing that instrument to be used for world development. We have seen the same thing that they've done against countries like Cuba, like Venezuela, where they deny them ability to transact at international level when these are international treaties. But when it suits them, they cut off countries. Today, for instance, as we speak, Venezuela cannot transact on the international system. Cuba struggles to transact on the international system. On the contrary, I think what we need, perhaps it's a welcome move. Russia will then see the need, given its technological advances, to develop capacity working with other countries like China and others to create alternatives, because this unilateralism of US and European imperialism that is imposed on the world must actually come to an end. We can't just be subjected to their atrocities, their evil deeds, so that you do what they want. If you don't, they cut you off from the rest of the world. That's completely unacceptable. We live in a modern society with extreme technological advances. Those alternatives should be available in the world. And we do know in Russia there exist alternatives of the pay system than what currently exists, what that is called the Swiss system.
Very well. Let's leave it there for now. Thank you so much for weighing in on this discussion with a different take. Soli Mapaila from the SACP saying that there's some reason in understanding why Russia needs to be supported.